Keely Reason here, owner of Love Hope Adventure, where I talk about the marriage relationship, intimacy in marriage, and how you can go deeper with your spouse. And today I'm talking about responsive sexual desire. You could probably also say that this is a person who doesn't get in the mood or doesn't feel like they're in the mood. And they kind of have that all the time, where it's like they're not in the mood real often, and they kind of never get in the mood on their own. That is somebody who has a responsive sexual desire. And it can be pretty misunderstood because if you are with someone who has a what we call spontaneous desire, a desire where you just spontaneously want sex kind of all the time, it's just sort of like always in the background. Somebody who has a responsive desire may really struggle with that because they're feeling pressure to have sex when they don't want to. Or maybe they feel like something's wrong with them because they aren't in the mood, or they're never in the mood, or they could just take it or leave it with sex. So here's just an idea to help you understand responsive desire, whether you're married to somebody with responsive desire or you yourself is somebody that has a responsive desire. So have you ever not been hungry, but you knew it was time to eat, but you're just not hungry and you don't feel like having dinner? That's how responsive desire spouse is. They aren't hungry, so they aren't going to get it. If you're hungry, you're a lot more motivated to get food, right? Versus when you're not hungry. So when you're not hungry, you kind of have to force yourself to do it. Maybe just going through the motions. All right, well, it is dinner time and I have to start cooking, and you're just going through the motions. How glamorous is that, right? It's not a whole lot of fun to go through the motions to get to the point to prepare a meal when you're not starving. You're not super motivated about it. You might not be very enthusiastic about it or even really excited about it. You're just going through those motions. A responsive desire person is in that same boat. It's not until the food gets on the table and they start eating it and realize how very hungry they were. Certainly, you've sat down to a meal that you weren't real excited to have because you came into it thinking, I'm not very hungry right now. And the minute you start eating, now you're starving. And you realize how much your body needed that food and how hungry you actually were. You just didn't recognize it up to that point. Or maybe your appetite just wasn't that big until you started feeding yourself. A responsive desire person is like that. And when it comes to sex, it feels very forced sometimes. They feel like they're forcing themselves. Their spouse probably feels like they're forcing themselves to have sex with them. If you are a person that has a spontaneous desire and you're really ready for sex, and it seems like your spouse is just having to come into this as a duty, it can be a turnoff. It can also make you feel like there's something wrong with you. What's wrong with me? Why don't they desire to have sex with me? And it's really not about you. And it's not about your ability to turn them on sexually. It can really feel that way, right? I mean, especially if you think to yourself, okay, it's my job to get my spouse aroused, to make them feel turned on. It's my job to get them there. With a responsive desire spouse, it's just as much their job. They have to mentally prepare for it. They have to get themselves in a position where they can start being open to being sexually aroused and do the things, go through those motions, what it takes for them to experience that arousal. And the truth is that even when they start experiencing the arousal, they may not have that clicking in their brain right away. So there are studies that show that women can be sexually aroused, like they can be experiencing that fluid, but they're not aware of it. They're not even aware that their body is becoming aroused. That's because their mind isn't there yet. Now, this is not to say that only women have a responsive desire. There's plenty of men that have responsive desires. There are plenty of people in positions where it's not just the way their arousal is. Sometimes it's based on medication you're on, your age, the way your hormones are. Hormones sometimes have a big play in your sexual arousal. This is why women have a period of time in the month where they feel very excited and very aroused when nothing's happening because their hormones are growing crazy and spiking. It's why teenagers get that way, right? It's because their hormones are going crazy. So there's a lot of different things that can contribute to being somebody who has a responsive desire, or it could just be in general your nature. So, what does a person who has that responsive desire do to engage in sex, to initiate, to be more excited about it, to get themselves there? Here's a couple of tips. One, schedule sex. And I know that a spontaneous desire spouse isn't probably going to immediately be like, let's schedule sex, right? Like they may not feel excited about that. Okay, fine. The responsive desire spouse has to be the one to at least schedule it in their own brain. If they want to spring it on that spontaneous desire spouse, that might be great. Generally speaking, a responsive desire spouse doesn't do as well with spontaneous sex, doesn't do well with it being sprung on them. So if you're the one leading it, if you're the one in your mind saying, okay, I'm going to approach my spouse tonight, what do I have to do right now to get myself ready for that? You don't have to put it on your calendar, but if you say, okay, every 2 or 3 days, or every Wednesday, or every time this situation is going to happen, our kids go to something at this hour, this is going to be the time. Set it aside in your own brain. Plan for it, prepare for it. It's just like getting all the ingredients together to prepare dinner. Go through those motions. Just continue to do the next thing. What's the next thing you need to do? How do you prepare for sex? So you've put it on your mental list. We're going to do it at this time. And then what things do you do? Do you get a shower? Do you brush your teeth? Do you put on lingerie? Do you straighten the bedroom? I don't know. Whatever that thing is that helps you feel ready to have sex, start there. There are a lot of things that we as people do to prepare ourselves for sex that's not necessarily with the other person. There's ways to get your mind and ready for that. Lighting candles, putting on romantic music, whatever it is that helps set that mood for you. Kind of following the recipe, right? And then putting it all together, inviting your spouse, would you like to spend time together? And then doing the next thing and the next thing. So one thing that a responsive desire spouse I encourage you to do is to say yes to, if your spouse is inviting you to have sex with them and asking for that, even if you're not feeling like it right in the moment, be more willing and more open to say yes, because by the end of it, if you go into it saying, I'm going to be open to this, can be great, and I can get there and I can feel happy and excited about this. If you put yourself in that position, then you probably will enjoy it more. Now, the other thing that helps a responsive desire spouse is to increase sexual frequency, to just have sex more often. I mean, eventually your body does start desiring it and wanting it more. So you might find that you increase your appetite by having more sex. Just like if you don't eat while you're sick, right? And you haven't eaten for a week and now you're not sick anymore, but you've kind of lost your appetite. The way to reclaim that is to just eat in little meals, just adding in and doing it more frequently, and that rebuilds your appetite. So this may help you feel more mentally ready, because now you're craving, at least mentally craving, that connection with your spouse because you've had it so regularly. Those are a couple of tips that I have for somebody who has a responsive desire. And hopefully if you are married to somebody who has a responsive desire, you understand where they're coming from a little bit more. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, Keely@lovehopeadventure.com, and don't forget to sign up for my newsletter. Chat with you later.